It's about a young man who had a unique opportunity to make something of himself in this life as the result of meeting an extraordinary Japanese woman who became probably the most important mentor he's ever had, who urged him to study hard, read, and one day write a book. So, in a sense, the book that I wrote is a thank you to her, a tribute to her for pointing me in the right direction at the age of 19 when I could have amounted to nothing. So the book is the story of our relationship, which was a very thoughtful one, passionate, but not in a sexual sense. It was a relationship in which we exchanged ideas, quite often at a coffee shop called the Mozart Cafe. And she filled my head with whatever she could in terms of Japanese literature, film, poetry. It was a wonderful experience.
What message do you want readers to take away from Please Enjoy Your Happiness?
Well, first of all, if you have letters from the person you had a relationship with, it's important to keep them. As you get older, you're going to have opportunities to read them and get a sense again of what you experienced as a younger person. That's one thing. And the other thing in terms of relationships between two people, try to have one or more people in your life who is a mentor, a true mentor, who you can have a very close bond with.
Did you always know that you wanted to write about your time with Yukiko? How long did you have an idea for the memoir?
You know, the idea for doing the book came probably in my late 60s. I'm 77 now. And one thing that got in the way was I couldn't find her letters. Her surviving letters are used in the book. I started traveling to Latin America, quite often met men my own age who had experiences before, not exactly like mine, but love affairs maybe that didn't work out, were not conventional. And after listening to a lot of these conversations over a period of years, I decided, I know I've got letters somewhere. I should try to find them. And after some searches, lo and behold, suddenly the letters materialized. They fell out of a book of poetry. So when that happened, I tried writing some sample chapters. I wrote about 3 and showed them to a friend who's in publishing. And he told me, he said, Paul, he said, this is the kind of thing that gets publishers excited. Romance, exotic land, younger man, older woman, exchange of intellectual ideas, unorthodox. Keep going. Before I did that, I did a lot of research, about a year and a half of watching Japanese film, reading books about Japan, trying to do everything I could to sort of recreate Japan 1959, the Japan that I remembered when I knew her. And then the writing started, and actually the writing part took only perhaps 5 or 6 months. It went very, very quickly. Once I got everything in gear, I wrote, and quite often wrote with passion, sometimes tearfully, sometimes laughing. But yeah, that's how it all came about.
If you could meet with Yukiko now, what would you tell her?
Thank you would be the first word. Domo arigatou gozaimashita would be the correct phrase. And I'm sure we would sit and do a lot of laughing, obviously would be curious to know what happened in each other's lives. And meeting her, you know, it is also a possibility if there is interest in the book eventually in Japan. I'd be happy to meet her again in a coffee shop where she and I did a lot of talking years and years ago.
It's clear in the memoir that Yukiko had a great impact on your life and your career as a journalist and writer. Do you think you would have pursued the same career path had you not met her?
That's a very good question. Well, you know, at the time I met her, I was working for the ship's newspaper, on this U.S. Navy ship that I was on called the USS Shangri-La. So I was starting to get a little bit of experience with that. But in terms of becoming a journalist, working in journalism professionally, no, I think that would have been, I would have said that that's crazy. You know, I would never amount to the sort of person who could do that. But she, in many ways, insisted, you know, that I read, that I do research, encouraged me with my writing. She started it. She definitely started it. And, you know, she predicted, again, in her letters several times, that I know that you will write a book. I know that I will probably hear about you one day. Yeah.
As a lighter question, in response to Kirkus Reviews, which said the memoir was, quote, right for film adaptation, who would play you and Yukiko in the movie version?
Well, yeah, I remember that line from the Kirkus Review. One of my sisters thinks that Jeremy Irons would be a good older me. Who would be the younger me? Because there are a couple of chapters in the book in which I reflect back on what happened from my present age. But for the younger me, I don't know. But my sister says, you know, there are plenty of young British actors who could probably pull it off. And in terms of the woman, Yukiko, I actually did some research to find out who among the current crop of Japanese actresses, late 20s, early 30s, spoke English, could speak English. And there are several actually living in New York City who've already acted in films in Hollywood at least, whose English is pretty good. I sort of watched some of their films, and in a couple of the cases I said, yeah, she probably would be a good match. And then for the other characters in the book, I think those would be fairly easy slots to fill once those three important roles, the two me's, the old me, the young me, and Yukiko, in her glory in her early 30s. Well, I would really love to see that role played out on the silver screen.
Is there any particular part of the book that you think is you'd like to highlight?
You know, I think one of the interesting things about preparing the manuscript was that when I first wrote the chapters, I wrote it only about the relationship between she and I, set back in 1959 and 60. The idea of trying to write something about myself the way I am now never occurred to me, and I didn't think anybody would be interested. But when the manuscript first floated over to London, where it was first published in January of last year, the publisher there said, you know, why don't you write us one chapter about the way you are now, look back on your life, and look back on this relationship. And I wrote it fairly quickly and sent it to her. And then a week later she said, yeah, I really love that chapter, write another one. Several reviewers or people who bought the book and have left reader comments said, well, what about the author's present life? How come he doesn't write about his marriages or his sons and everything? And I'm thinking, but don't they understand? You know, the book's already 360 pages. What do they want to turn it into, War and Peace in terms of book length? I don't think that ever occurs to people. But I am writing a second memoir now, based on exploits and experiences in Cambodia in 1970 and 1975 when the Khmer Rouge seized the city. And I lost many, many dear friends there, journalists and photographers who were murdered, who vanished. That's quite a tale, so I'm deeply into writing that.
Right. That answers another question, what's upcoming.
Yeah.
And then, would you be be interested in reading a section of that chapter.
Absolutely. Which chapter?
The one that you just mentioned.
Yeah. Let me find
Okay.
the book. Am I Okay? Is chapter 20, page 253. And this is about the way I am now. I see myself as I was then, with the supremely sweet sadness of old age. Yuki. I say sweet sadness because there is still so much yet to savor and so little I can forget. I'm no longer innocent. However, and you would probably be delighted to know this, I'm still just as intense. I spend hours considering every aspect of the issues confronting me now. If you could hear me having conversations with myself, you might also wonder why sometimes I laugh out loud in delight when intensity results in inspiration, and why at other times I become reflective, especially when I have to pass my city's vast cemetery, with all that blinding white marble bearing so many fine words. Sometimes I remember one small thing you said. Yesterday I was laying out a gravel pathway in my cactus garden, and I suddenly heard you declaring, as you did one day when you were showing me how to write kanji with an ink brush, God did not intend for kanji to be straight. I looked. I could curve the path around a boulder and then again around the next boulder, so visitors would pay attention to each of the tiny cacti I have planted that otherwise would go unnoticed. I like to think that path is my kanji in the desert. In my later years, something I cannot define has happened to me, Yukiko. Maybe similar things have happened to you, too. I pay attention to many things I formerly ignored or did not notice. Sunsets. I've been looking up at the evening sky. Dew. I've started walking on the grass in my bare feet. The key smile that defines a person. I now remember that smile. The unopened book waiting to be opened. The music yet to be heard. The love song yet to be written. The 2-mile walk around my block waiting to be walked. The woman staring up at the dead tree in her front lawn who suddenly asked me if it was true that she could get a kiss if she stood underneath a live mistletoe growing on a branch above her head. The little army of dark green seedlings in the black earth where last year I buried the yellow rind and seeds of a delicately flavored Vietnamese pomelo.
Thank you very much. Paul Brinkley-Rogers.